The testimony of Elliot Ossowit. Elliot's story reminded me of a 3:16 verse. It's not the one you know, but it's in 2 Corinthians 3:16. Listen to these words. When one turns to the Lord, the veil is taken away. This verse refers to Moses, and when he turned to the Lord, he took off his veil. When Elliot Ossowit turned to the Lord, his veil was lifted and he found freedom in Jesus Christ. Elliot was born in 1949 into a Reformed Jewish family. His father was a strict man and a faithful attendee of the synagogue, but it did not express any love for God. His love for Elliot was the belt, and he would say, "I'm doing this because I love you." Elliot was bar mitzvah at age 13, went into the army at age 17, and never went back to the synagogue. He married his wife Polly, a Christian, and successfully kept his wife and two daughters away from church and God when he was at home. If her pastor came to the door and he was home, Elliot would say, "No Jesus in this house." When Elliot left the army, he became a physician's assistant. To the world, Elliot was well liked. He tried not to be like his father, how his father showed love, but although he didn't take his belt to his daughters, he showed them his love by his stern voice and stature. As Elliot later said, their love for him was due to their fear of him, just like his father and Elliot. To make more money, Elliot became director of a company that when he came to the Lord, he called Heathen Tours. He and the men he took on these tours had a great time in their mind. During this time, he failed Polly, his wife, in the worst possible way. He was gone when she needed him home when she had a mastectomy. A close Christian couple friend of theirs took care of her while he was absent on a heathen tour. On Christmas Eve, 1996, their relationship came to a head when Elliot came home from a heathen tour and found the door to his house locked, and Polly on the other side would not let him in. She said to him, "You are no good for me and the family, and we would be better and happier without you." This was after 30 years of marriage. Elliot got back in his truck and drove to a local motel. It dawned on him that as he entered the motel, that his life was over. He had lost everything that was important to him. He said he was more angry than depressed. And when he went into the room, he looked at the TV and saw a book on top of it. He knew it was a Gideon Bible, and he didn't want anything to do with it. He swiped it off the TV and it fell open onto the floor. He then kicked it to put it under the bed and get it out of the way. However, this bed had a wooden frame from the bottom of the mattress to the floor, and the open Bible skidded back toward him. As he reached down to pick it up and put it in a drawer, he heard the strongest voice in his head say, "Read it now." Elliot found unusual warmth in his hands as he picked up the Bible and was in John 14 and his eyes fell on verse 27. Peace I leave with you. My peace I give to you, not as the world gives it to you. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid. He said this was the first sign of love. Elliot immediately called his wife Polly and told her he was out of control and he could not understand what was going on in his mind, and he felt so terrible. He then asked Polly if her pastor would see him. Polly said she didn't know, but gave him the pastor's phone number. He immediately called the pastor. Remember, this is Christmas Eve. And he asked the pastor if he would see him after the holidays. The pastor said, "No, I will see you the first thing Christmas morning." To Elliot, this was the second sign of love. On Christmas morning, he met Polly's pastor, and he started to cry as he confessed what he had done. The pastor didn't scold, judge, or pity him. The pastor simply listened and then asked Elliot if he knew about Jesus Christ. He then told Elliot that the only way he could make it through the addiction of sin and have a peaceful life was to invite Jesus into his life. Another sign of love. He then told Elliot to read the Gospel of John 3 times. He then left the pastor and he started back to the motel, and as he came toward Polly's house, on the way back, he turned into the driveway of the Christian Friends who was there for Polly when she had a mastectomy. He didn't realize why he did this. He knocked on the door, it was open, and the children were opening presents. And Elliot started crying again. Herb and Barb Bush didn't know what was going on between he and Polly, and when they heard, Barb started crying and left the room. She returned with a book, a prayer journal, which she kept and told Elliot she had been praying for him for more than 10 years. To Elliot, another sign of love. After reading the Gospel of John 3 times, he called Polly and asked if he could go to church with her. Polly said he could, but the tone of her voice was that she didn't care. Her pastor gave a powerful sermon, and when he was finished, Elliot said he went forward and told the pastor he needed help. The pastor asked Elliot if he was ready to accept Jesus into his life, and Elliot said yes. He then asked Elliot if he was doing it for Polly, and Elliot said, "No, I'm doing it for me." People in the pews came forward and put their hands on him as the pastor prayed, and this included Polly, and their marriage was healed and restored. Here's the rest of Elliot's story in a nutshell. He went to seminary, he became a pastor, and with support from Polly, Elliot was employed by a company looking for a tour director of Christian tours. In April 2002, he served as pastor of a Baptist church in Lansing, North Carolina. Then in 2003, a small group of believers in the church and Elliot planted a new church called Faith Fellowship and Harvest Ministries. Their oldest daughter came to know the Lord, and his youngest daughter and he were baptized together in 1997. Elliot led 3 of his grandchildren to the Lord, and he baptized them. At a Gideon's Pastor's Appreciation Banquet, when I was the principal speaker, Elliot Ossowit gave his testimony. And he said to them, God has been so good to our family that we now are a recovering, reconciled, restored, and most of all, a resurrected family, and we give God all the glory and honor. Elizabeth and I have been blessed in being friends with Elliot and Polly over the years. Next week, I will give you a short testimony by Elliot on love, because that is what he found as I told you his testimony. God bless you and have a good week.